Hey, vet science students, welcome back to our formulating a ration section of the animal nutrition unit. This is going to be a really important section because I'm going to explain how to do the Pearson square method, which is going to form the basis of a lot of different things that we do over the next couple of slides. So let's get started. So a common method of Pearson square or formulating rations is something called the Penn State shaker box. And this is something that our school does not have right now. I'd love to get us one in the future. But basically, Penn State shaker box is a tool that we use to help sort out and figure out the different nutrients that are in a ration. So I have a video linked here that you can watch on your own time if you would like. But basically, it's kind of like this picture over here. We have different crates with holes on the bottom. And those holes are different sizes. Okay, so on the top, the holes are a little bit bigger, and the bottom, as you work your way down, the holes get a little bit smaller. And this kind of sorts out the different elements of that feed. Okay, so you're going to have like your bigger pieces of nutrient, kind of like your hay or maybe some silage towards the top, and then the smaller items, like maybe some of your additives if you have any, or vitamins or minerals, are going to find their way down towards the bottom. And then we can take measurements and figure out how much of each nutrient is present in that feed sample. So as you complete a ration, you need to ask yourself the following questions. Did we correct any deficiencies? Is it palatable or physically feasible to feed the animal? So is it something that it's going to actually eat? What was your cost per pound or per ton? And list any additions or supplements that you added. So those are things that you want to consider as you make your ration for your livestock or your animals at home. Okay. So let's assume we are feeding corn or feeding an animal corn with a crude protein percentage of 9, and the requirements for your animal is 12. So the corn you're feeding your animal does not meet the requirements of your animal. So by doing a feed calculation, we can add a supplement and increase the crude protein to meet the level required. Because if we need 12 and we're only feeding 9, we're not meeting that goal. So we have to find a different way to get that animal the rest of their requirement. Okay? The simplest way to do this is through using something known as a Pearson square. So I broke this down into a few steps. So you're going to want to follow along here. Okay. So the first step is get your square. This is the easiest step. You just draw a square like that. Okay. Step 2, input your info. So your first feed, so in the problem, we're going to have 2 different feed samples that we're comparing. Okay. And figuring out how much of each we need to add. Feed number 1 goes up to the upper left-hand corner along with the crude protein percent. Feed number 2 is going to go on the bottom left-hand corner along with that crude protein percent. And in the middle, you're going to put the amount of crude protein that you want in the end. Step number 3, you're going to subtract both feed sources and crude protein percents along the square with the desired crude protein percent. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Step number 4, the numbers you get after subtracting will be the parts you need of the 2 different feeds, and that's going to be up here and down here. Okay, so again, we subtract, and then we get our parts per feed. Okay. Then you add the 2 parts together and get the total parts for the feed ration, and that's down here. So you add the parts of feed 1 and the parts of feed 2 to get your total. Step number 6 is the parts of each feed can be expressed as a percent simply by dividing the individual parts and multiplying the parts, or individual parts by the total parts and multiplying by 100. So we take the parts of feed 1 divided by the total parts times 100, and that's the percent of feed 1 that we need. Take the parts of feed 2 divided by the total parts times 100, and that's the percent of feed 2 that we need. So again, we can collect this information from our Pearson square. So parts of feed number 1 is right here. We put that right in here. Our total parts is down in the lower right-hand corner after we added 1 and 2 together. We divide it by that total parts and multiply it by 100. Okay. Then step 7, we calculate the pounds of each feed you need by multiplying your percent of feed by how many pounds of feed that you need. Okay. And then the last step is checking your math. And this is not necessarily a requirement, but it is very good habit to get into to make sure you didn't miss anything, because everything should add up to be the total amount of pounds that you need given in your problem. So let's go through an example together. Let's say that we have 2,000 pounds or a ton of feed that is needed to feed a 100-pound growing hog. Your hog is fed a corn and soybean meal, or SBM. We need 18% crude protein in the diet. Corn's crude protein is 8.9%, and soybean meal crude protein is 44.4%. So basically, we are trying to figure out what amount of corn and soybean is needed to give us that crude protein of 18%. That's our goal. So the first step is to get your square. Then we're going to input our information. So feed number 1 is corn, that goes up here, and feed number 2 is soybean meal, and our goal is 18%. Then we are going to subtract both feed sources crude protein across the square with the desired crude protein. Okay. Now, here's something that I did not mention previously. If it goes negative, like here, 8.9 minus 18 equals negative 9.1. Flip that negative to a positive. So we only want positives over on the right-hand side. Okay, so we took 8.9 minus 18 to get 9.1 parts. And then we took 44.4 minus 18 to get 26.4 parts. Then we're going to add them together and get a total of 35.5 parts. Okay, you see how I did that? 26.4 plus 9.1 equals 35.5. Now we're going to do some math. We're going to divide the individual parts by the total parts and multiply by 100. So again, we had 26.4 parts of corn right here, divided by our total of 35.5 times 100. That means that our diet should be 74.44% corn. We're going to do the same for soybean meal. 9.1 parts divided by our total of 35.5 times 100 gives us 25.6% of our diet should be soybean meal. So then we can multiply those percentages by 2,000 pounds, because that's how much is in a ton. And then this helps us determine that we need 1,488 pounds of corn and 512 pounds of soybean meal. Then we can mix this together really, really well. And then we can assume that when a cow eats its dinner, or when the hog eats its dinner, it's going to have an adequate supply of crude protein between the corn and the soybean it's getting. Okay. Again, step 8, we can check our math. Our math looks good. Yep, 18% checks. So this is an option that you can do. Okay, so again, this slide kind of re-explains the 8 different steps of the Pearson square method. We are going to stop there. We're going to kick off the next video by you guys doing a practice problem on your own. So if this does not make sense, I would highly encourage you to go back and rewatch this video and take some more notes. Thank you.